This recording is from the January 2024 event for the Salesforce Developer Group in Denver, where we cover highlights from the Spring 24 release, hosted and presented by the group leaders, Lauren LaMonte, Paul Fox, and Jeff Pearson. Hope you enjoy and thanks for watching. Presenting first, so I'm going to be covering just like tips in general, like housekeeping items with releases. I know for a while I was kind of lost with how to stay up to date on releases, and there are also a lot more like really awesome resources that Salesforce provides, and then other people who post blogs and things like that. So I wanted to just share some things that I do, some tips over the past like 7 or 8 years that I've been doing this that I've kind of caught on to. And then I kind of like did a deep dive into unified CLI or SFDX versus SF CLI, and I'll be talking about that a bit because it is pertinent to this release. And then I'll also be talking about a couple of deprecations. All right, cool. So first I'll go through some release tips. So Salesforce, like I said, over the past few years has continuously added more and more helpful resources for staying on top of the 3 releases and 3 release cycles that we have every year. So I just wanted to drop a few in here, and we'll share on the slides too. But first, there's, of course, a trail on Trailhead. So I'll just jump into that really quick, and basically goes through kind of the high level aspects of the release. And this year, I think, or this release, I think, is 600-page document. So it's like a lot. I don't think anyone, I mean, I'd be impressed if anyone read all of that. So this kind of highlights a lot of the high level things that are the most important to know, at least offhand. Then, of course, like I said, there's the documentation, which has it even has like a how-to. Yeah, it has a how to use the release notes, which I've used frequently. And here we have like Trailblazer community. So of course there's a release readiness Trailblazer community, as well as different feedback throughout the different areas where you can get information. For example, here's some feedback right here. And Salesforce customer success on X, formerly Twitter. So you can mention Ask Salesforce and get information you need. And I think, and then there's get ready for the release. And this will provide like some really helpful documents here. So they have an overview deck, they have milestones, a release matrix. So you'll see this one's super helpful in my opinion, because you can see kind of like what will be released when, and whether or not it's a something you have to install or something that will automatically be released to your users. I'm trying to find the matrix, but you can click into that if you want to go deeper into that. There's a release website, demos, and then of course there are some release readiness live sessions on Salesforce Plus, which is the online recorded and live streaming resource that Salesforce offers. And there's a developer preview on Thursday, February 8th, if you want to attend that. And then, of course, there's a podcast. So pretty much any medium, any flavor you like is available to you if you want to or need to know how to keep up to date with releases.
Or you can just put all your faith in us.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to make a comment about that. It's like for years I tracked releases and all of the changes coming up. Very, very, so infrequently did anything bad ever happen that it can kind of make you kind of complacent. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
Playing.
Definitely. Yeah.
In fact, I don't even think it was any of the releases that you couldn't opt into that did anything bad.
Yeah, Salesforce has learned over the years to try not to break things with releases, but if you're not paying attention to the releases, you also might be missing out on a lot of stuff that may benefit your company or your clients, depending on what kind of work you do.
Yeah, and we'll see that a bit with when I get into like the SF versus SFDX CLI stuff, that there is often like a long-term deprecation, like Salesforce deprecates things over a longer period, and also will make things like backwards compatible so that they don't break pretty often. But at a certain point with certain features, you have to actually do something about it. Otherwise, you'll wake up one day and have a bunch of users asking you why something's not working. Yeah, so any other tips that anyone would like to share about how they keep up to date or anything, any lessons learned or anything with releases?
Ashish pointed out in chat that there is a whole sandbox preview program and a pre-release org program. At a certain point before the release, you can make sure to refresh your sandboxes and see if they're on the pre-release version or the normal version. And the pre-release sandboxes will be upgraded earlier. And then if you, for some reason, miss that, you can also sign up for a pre-release org directly. They'll usually post a link. And there's also, if you're creating scratch orgs from a development standpoint, there's a way in your definition for your scratch org creation to specify that you want a pre-release version.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, as far as the pre-release sign up, that form is included in this get ready for the release. So, and I believe there's some other, I saw another one on here earlier, but yeah, that's a good thing to point out for sure. Cool. Anything else before we move on? All right. So then as far as the timeline for the release, basically the process is, the milestones in the process is pretty much the same for each release. And it is good to know like when it will hit your specific org or your instance that your org is on. And I think you're always kind of on the same cycle, but the way that you can find that out, it happens over 3 weekends. So we'll see that the release has already gone into the first third of the first group of orgs on the 12th. It'll go into the second on the 2nd of February and then the 9th of February. So if you want to figure out like when your release is scheduled for your org, basically you get your instance information. So you basically find like the name of the server that your org is tied to, and then you can visit status.salesforce.com. Type that in here. Visit NA 163. And this is actually good to know if I'm guessing most people know about status.salesforce.com. But basically, once you click on that instance, you'll see the current status. So if there's any issues or anything, you'll see that here. You'll see the history, as well as the releases, which fall under the maintenance category. So you'll see like when you're scheduled to, or when the org you're looking at is scheduled to be updated. Cool. So the next thing I'll go over, this is not the best segue, I'll just jump into it. But the next thing I'll go over is there are a few things that are being deprecated, and I'm mentioning these first because we'll get into, it basically answers the question of why, if you're currently using the SFDX CLI, why it's important to move to SF. So first, the AMP migration tool is going to be retired as of spring 24, which means that there'll be no like bug fixes, or it won't be available to run deployments and retrievals. So those should really go through the Salesforce CLI moving forward. And then again, Workbench has been legacy and unsupported for a few years at this point. So you should really use the tools that are available within the code builder and CLI if you're still using Workbench. I actually used Workbench last week, so. Yeah, there was like one workaround that someone brought up to me at work yesterday about, they were like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. But if I go into Workbench and like go through all these tabs, I'm like, oh man, this is, yeah, it can get messy quick.
In typical Salesforce deprecation, neither of these have any end of life plan, but they're no longer getting updates. So you'll notice as Salesforce adds new features to the APIs, they're not added to these tools. And the CLI does much more than AMP migration already. So pay attention to what she's going to show you.
Yeah. So then Salesforce Functions is also going away. I know of one developer who's used Salesforce Functions. Has anyone else used them? Yeah. Do you want to talk about Salesforce functions at all? No. Yeah, so Salesforce functions are now, are they going to be, do you know if they're deprecated or?
I think they're officially going away.
They're
Not
gone.
going to be accessible, but
All
I don't
right,
know.
so it won't really impact too many people in this room, it sounds like. And then this will come up because I'm about to get into the Salesforce CLI stuff, but I was using the SFDX CLI up until, well, I'm technically still using it in a lot of cases, but I was using it up until like today at 12 p.m. And when I was looking through the docs, I was like, oh, okay, this is important to know that we no longer update SFDX. And the last stable version is, I was actually needed to update mine anyway. So I was like super behind. The commands were still working, but yeah, not great to be like using something where they're not actively working on fixing bugs and all that. So now I'm going to get into unified. I'm going to get into Salesforce CLI, which is also known as Unified CLI, which is also known as SFv2. So basically, has anyone here, how many people here use or have used SFDX CLI? Okay, so this is basically the command line at this point, the deprecated command line interface that Salesforce had to kind of manage deployments, as well as like syncing files between like your local machine and your different orgs, and also, you know, if you're using a repo or anything like that. So basically, SFDX is the deprecated version of that, and there's now, since I think the beginning of, or the end of 2022, an initiative called Unified Salesforce CLI. It came up because it's kind of new. It's been, I don't know if it's been rebranded or just like evolved into different names, but I saw it referred to as Unified CLI as well as Salesforce CLI as well as SF. Has anyone here migrated to SFv2? Yeah.
We had to like uninstall. That's kind of a pain to uninstall and install.
Yeah. When did you do it?
Just like last week.
Okay.
I had 2 people on the team do it last week.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm going to walk through those steps, and it's a little bit. Oh yeah.
Help them do theirs.
Mm-hmm.
If you upgrade, there's also like a lot of benefits in terms of performance and just like response, like better error messaging and logging for the tool. So it's worth the upgrade, even if they weren't deprecated in SFDX.
Yeah, I mentioned some of them, but if y'all know any other benefits, feel free to shout them out if I missed them. Cool. So basically, Salesforce CLI, aka Unified CLI, aka SF CLI, is a, like I said, command line interface or a CLI that you use in your dev workflow to do numerous things. And basically, the initiative of Salesforce CLI unification is to take tools that were like previously disparate and put them all under one unified like command line, basic or language command line interface that could essentially control like all the dev workflow thing and all the things you do in your dev workflow. So it consolidates a lot of the Salesforce CLI tools, and the intent is, and the goal is to make things more efficient and more streamlined for Salesforce developers. I'm by no means an expert in CLI, and a lot of the stuff I learned today and yesterday, so feel free to jump in if you know more about something, or, but yeah, so this is what I've learned in the past 24 hours. Cool. So my question was, why do I need to migrate? I have SFDX, I'm using those commands like on a daily basis throughout my day. My life seems fine. Well, when I looked into it, apparently it's not going to be fine forever, because the version, unless I update to the V2, which I'll get to in a second, essentially everything that I was using had been deprecated for a while. And the Salesforce CLI is, it improves developer productivity by following familiar CLI patterns. So if you've like done the SFDX force force org open or whatever, like, and with the colons, that's actually like not really up to like this. It's not standardized to like the other types of CLIs. So like if you're used to using Git or another CLI, like I've never had to do colons. I've never had to keep things in a specific order. So that's an improved typing experience, as well as it's now taxonomy free. So you can write SF org open or SF open org, which actually makes more sense in my mind. So it's kind of cool to have that freedom and have them mean the same things. And what's cool is they're doing more, they're getting closer to like a continuous releases. So there are weekly releases on Wednesdays, and you can find the release notes on their GitHub repo. And here you'll actually see, this looks like that's it. You'll see the SF releases as well as SFDX release notes here. What I was alluding to before is basically the backwards compatibility is, like, Salesforce is kind of slowly phasing out the SFDX commands so that there is backwards compatibility. But as I pointed out before, this is a very old version and very far behind what the current SF CLI offers. Yeah, I think any other benefits that people know about? There's better performance and error handling.
2 less characters to type all the time.
2 less characters and like the fewer colon, like I feel like it's way fewer characters.
I think there's also additional functionality around managing like contextual like actions you can do based on like managing a user, cloning something, like using org shapes. Actually, org shapes are with the new release. This is a good opportunity. Like if anybody looking to use the Scratch org doesn't have the opportunity to do that. Now that with org shapes, you can actually create you can create a Scratch org and install all your managed packages, all your dependencies,
Nice.
and then make them into an org shape. This way, you can actually create Scratch orgs from basically like a template. But the only disadvantage of that, I haven't had an opportunity to use it, is you can't use it on the next edition. So it's once a new Salesforce version comes out, that one you can't you have to create a new org shape. So if anybody's looking to try out org shapes, just right now.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask something.
Yeah.
I am really scared of something really stupid, but I've been working in software for a while, but only now I'm studying for the dev certification, and I set it up in my environment in Visual Studio Code, and in Visual Studio Code, I have the CLI installed with all those FDX commands. So from what you're saying, I should get a new version of the CLI, and in this new version of the CLI, I wouldn't be using those SFDX commands that show up under Visual Studio Code. Is that
Yeah, so yes, so essentially yes. But depending on, so this actually was super confusing to me when I was like walking through this. So I'm going to walk through the installation steps, and also I guess I'll just cover it now. But what was super confusing to me is that basically based on the way that you installed Salesforce CLI, you have you either have SFDX and SF installed, or you just have SFDX installed. So Salesforce CLI, they have an installer. And when you install it today, you'll get SFDX and SF installed. So like you could be on the most recent version, but what I would say is do like SFDX version and see if you're in the most recent version or if you're in the technically deprecated version. So what I'm saying here is So I basically thought I was on the newer version of it, and then I did SFDX version and saw that I was on like 7.1. So I was even in a older version of SFDX than the last stable version. So it says here the current release of SF is V2. So basically, to get the V2 version, I had to uninstall what I had for Salesforce CLI and then reinstall it. And it sounds super confusing, but there's actually pretty good docs on it if you like have the patience to read through it. Because at first I was like, oh yeah, like kind of skimming through it, and I was like, I actually have to like really read this closely to understand what's happening. But I will pull up. I wonder if I'll be able to see term. Was it? So did you think you were updated and then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like suddenly stopped working and we have to add wrinkle up Microsoft profiles, so it's like.
Oh yeah.
Elevated one. So
What
no,
happens,
we had the same thing.
Yeah.
what happens if you install both? Did you accidentally?
We did, and it didn't work. It kept getting like a just unrecognized command error every time you tried it from the check your version or whatever.
Yeah. So, okay. So basically what we're talking about now is I have the steps to install it, and I hope everyone can see. This is kind of small. But basically it says you first uninstall SFDX v7 and then install SFv2. So basically what I did was I went into my terminal. I went into terminal. I don't know if they can see this on the, can you see this on the?
No, we're still in the presentation.
Okay. How can I show this? Yeah. Here it is. Okay. Can I share terminal? Wow, why do I have so many things? Okay.
You can do entire screen. It's probably easier.
Yeah, I just don't know. Okay, I'll just do entire screen. Let's see.
Yep, we're good.
Cool.
You might want to zoom in a little.
Yeah. Cool. So what I did is first I just went in and did, it's kind of hard because it's already installed, but let's see. I need to get out of here. Okay, so I did SFDX version, and here you'll see like which version you're on. Now I'm updated, so this says 2.25.7, but it said like I said before, like 7.12 or something. So what I did, and then I looked back at the version that was listed in the documentation I just showed, and it said the last stable version of SFDX before it was deprecated was 7.2 something. So I realized then like, oh, even though I have access to SF and SFDX commands, I'm technically like in the previous version. Is that clear at all for your question?
Yeah, I think what I might be getting confused is how it shows up in Visual Studio Code, because I think in Visual Studio Code you still have the extension which is separate from the CLI, and under Visual Studio Code you're still going to see, I think, those SFDX commands, right? And those should be up to date, and they're not necessarily related to the CLI.
Yeah, if you're running the commands from the command palette and letting it run in the terminal, like whatever it's programmed, then you'll have to wait for the extensions to update what they're calling.
But if you have terminal open in VS Code, isn't that just the same as having like being in the terminal?
There's the palette window. She's talking about it.
Command Shift P and then
Oh,
something.
like this.
You look for, yeah, exactly. It's the SFDX colon.
You
It'll
could
still
probably,
say that, probably.
you could probably go to the output and see what will execute if you run that. Are they still using SFDX or?
You mean if I run one of these palette commands?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, you can do that and cancel it.
Yeah, it's just gonna ask me some things. Okay. So here we would see,
SFTX org.
Looks like they're still using SFDX.
where do you see that? Sorry, I'm
The
just,
last 3 lines.
yeah. So this is the old style with the colons.
I guess
Interest.
the most important thing for people to know is if you upgrade, you're not losing SFDX. You're just getting SF as
Yeah.
an additional command, and you should just transition to benefit from some of those, but you can still have SFDX.
Yeah.
But that new command palette, those aren't even available yet?
No, they're available. Those are still using SFDX in this case.
So you think that's the new version of the V2 stuff, but using SFDX?
No,
command?
no.
No, it's on.
I think there's no new stuff on the command palette.
Okay.
I wonder if I just have to
haven't
upgrade my extension. So I think you're thinking of, so basically those are shortcuts for the actual commands to do it through this palette. But if you're writing straight into the terminal, I think, so this says that it's on 2.25.7. So
So
I
Lauren,
might just need to
basically,
update my extension.
You never use the command palette, you just use the.
I use like a salad of things.
I love how honest.
I mean, some things are easier to type out and some things are just easier to, yeah.
In Code Builder is essentially like a webified version of Visual Studio Code, right?
Yep.
Does it have these extensions built in?
Yes.
Does it
I
have
think it does,
V2?
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at it since this came out, so,
yeah.
but I would assume that it's got the latest versions of the core stuff. You can add your own extensions to it too.
Cool. Yeah, so I hope that that's clear. Are there any questions or things that are not clear that I can talk more about?
That's made me think of a really easy question, probably, because I haven't used Code Builder yet, but it's in my org as enableable. And this is a stupid question, but it's a free feature, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not available in dev orgs yet, right?
Last
I tried to
checked, that was a couple
install it.
months ago.
Okay, I tried to set it up today and it still wasn't available.
Why would you want Code Builder?
In a dev.
Not in your dev orgs.
Right.
You can,
Yeah.
once you're running Code Builder, you can connect to any org. You don't have to,
Oh.
you don't have to only do it in the
Gotcha.
org that launched it.
Oh,
So
yes,
log into
actually
your
you mentioned that.
production org, launch
Yeah,
Code Builder and then connect to
I
your dev
forgot
org.
that you had mentioned that.
All right.
Just like you would in Visual Studio.
Cool. So I think I'm taking up a lot of time, so I'm gonna kind of go through the rest of this.
Sorry for making questions.
No.
We've got
I
lot
tend to
more
be a
cover.
little long-winded, so I will try to be. Okay. I think that we might be close to everything I covered, but oh yeah, so no, we're not. So basically, what you do first is you uninstall SFDX. So you run commands that are included in this documentation. Where are they? Basically, what I had to do was uninstall. Let's see where it is. Did I pass it?
There you go.
Yes. This is if you've installed it through NPM. So you have to figure out if you've installed it through NPM or through, this is where it gets like wonky. You have to figure out if you installed it through NPM or if you installed it through the installer that I was talking about. If you installed it through NPM, then you run this command. If not, there are a list of commands. Here is what I was looking for. You basically run all of these. It uninstalls everything. You have the option to also uninstall config files for your like authentication that or to orgs you've authenticated to. I chose not to do that. And then when I reinstalled it, I still had all of those authentications like set up. So that was really nice. And then I was just pretty instantly able to write SF and SFDX commands that are still supported in the terminal within a couple minutes. So honestly, the thing that took the longest for me was getting over the fact that I had to uninstall SFDX because I was scared that I would just like completely break everything. And then actually uninstalling it or actually reading the documentation and figuring it out was what took the longest. But everything was set up super well, and I was actually very pleased with how smooth it was in the end. Yeah, so then I would just say keep up to date with these releases if you're going to make the switch, which I highly recommend. And you'll see as they slowly deprecate out different SFDX commands, I'm sure they will put it in these notes. All right. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to check on the food and hand it over to Paul.
We can stop sharing too.
And I'm going to stop sharing.
All right. You got the full screen?
Let me see.
Oh, and it started over. All right, so I'm gonna go through a few things that are coming for VS Code, and then cover all the rest of that stuff that's listed. I'll keep going. You guys can read that slide. So first off, the thing I was really excited to present doesn't seem available yet. The release notes that were just posted a couple weeks ago, or the developer blog that was posted a couple weeks ago, it's not updating. That's right. We need to put her on the. Jeff, you're seeing the right thing, right?
I'm seeing Ron's computer.
Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties, like all good live presentations. Okay, so as I was saying, these two things should be coming pretty soon. So Einstein should be enabled to do test code generation and inline autocomplete, which we already have a form of autocomplete. Like if you start with a class, it'll autocomplete like methods or other things that are in your library. But theoretically, this should be more like Copilot or something like that if you've used GitHub, like AutoDev. And so, and the test code generation should be similar to what you can already do with ChatGPT, but built into VS Code. So stay tuned to those. Look for updates on developer.force.com. The second thing that Jaleel already mentioned is Scratch.org snapshots. So if you want to try setting up a Scratch.org with a certain configuration, if you're using Scratch.orgs, you can go into your dev hub. So this is typically like your production org, and go to set up Scratch.orgs and enable Scratch.org snapshots. Now, if you're not on Spring 24 yet, you'll have to wait until your org is upgraded to be able to turn this on. Unfortunately, I didn't have one that was where production was upgraded yet, so I have not played around with this. But then you get an SF command, SF org create snapshot. You also have commands like delete snapshot, update snapshot. And then once you have a snapshot, you can create Scratch orgs off of it.
Sorry.
No worries. People online, if you have trouble hearing us, just let us know in chat and we'll pause for a second. Couple of new Apex developer preview things. So I don't know if anybody's ever tried to deal with zip files in Salesforce, but if you're having people upload those, you typically have to use a third party. Now there's a built-in zip writer class that can let you like decompress files or compress files for people to download. There's also the ability, I'll click into a couple of these. So here's an example of what zip writer can do. So say content document IDs, those are chatter attachments or files. You can go through, add them into the writer, and then create a zip file. And then you can email that zip file to somebody. So hopefully, especially with Salesforce attachment limits for emails, this might help a lot if you're sending groups of files. Second is the ability to evaluate formulas. Now, when one of the developers on my team first posted this in Slack, I was kind of like, why would you want to evaluate formulas in Apex? Like, we could just write this in Apex. Like, why would I evaluate some text formula? But then they pointed out, like, if you're building apps for your team, you could have places where they can write in formulas like in a text field, and then you can validate them when they save the record. You can run them and update other fields with it. So it makes it to where you can do a bunch of stuff that dynamically. You can also, if you have formula fields and need to like know the result of the formula field when you're dealing with like triggers or before a record insert, you can theoretically get the formula field definition, evaluate the value without having to submit the DML and know what the formula result would be. So kind of cool feature, obviously a little bit on the custom app development side.
Can the formula be any string?
Yeah, it's got to be in there like with their supported functions and stuff like that, but you can use any string.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And then who here does JavaScript development? Got a couple. Okay. Well, for those of you that do JavaScript, this null coalescing operator is probably pretty familiar. This takes a formula, a typical comparison where it's like, if something is blank, then do this, else do this other thing, and turns it into a single line. So here, for example, you have account A equals this query. But if the query returns null, what do you do? So with this double question mark, you just say, if the query is null, use the default account instead. So it cuts down on a lot of lines, especially since we all love the null pointer errors. And hopefully everybody's doing code to avoid them. And so they have a lot of if statements just to check if something's null.
Is that an Apex or?
This is an Apex. It was already, since it's a JavaScript standard,
Yeah.
already works in Aura and Lightning components.
Otherwise you would do what, like return your statement?
Yeah. And then the last one I thought was kind of funny. I don't know how many of you have gotten where you're doing DML and callouts and you get the error that says you have uncommitted work pending. Please something or roll back your changes. But I don't know if you've ever tried, like you couldn't actually roll back your changes to make the call out. So it was like, there's probably 5 ideas on the idea exchange that were like, it tells me to roll back my changes, but I can't. Even if you roll back the save point, it would not let you do a call out still. So this might be relevant if you're doing integrations and you're trying to like call an endpoint and you get data and you're trying to save it in Salesforce. But then what do you do if that fails? Oftentimes you have to call back to that endpoint and say, oh, we didn't actually update this data, like, mark it for update later or something like that. And so now with that simple couple of lines, you can do the typical rollback with the save point. And then you can release the save point. And that's the key to allow you to do callouts again. And then you can do whatever your callout is. All right, so next up is Data Cloud. Is anybody in here using Data Cloud? Okay, so I'll just skip that.
I'm still wondering what it is.
Okay, so first off, Data Cloud is allowing you to connect to OpenAI and build custom models. So you can check out the details on it, but everything in here is basically done through Einstein Studio. So like everything, it's somewhat declarative. You just go into Einstein Studio, you can build a new model from scratch. And with the spring release, you can now connect it to OpenAI. So you can build OpenAI based models.
And this was formerly Genie?
I get so confused with the marketing, but yes, I believe this was formerly Genie.
And Data Cloud is Customer 360, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The second thing is if you're sending Salesforce data to Data Cloud, you used to have to do like an extract and load, which seemed really hilarious to me when they launched it. I was like, wait, this is a Salesforce app and it doesn't like have a native connector. Well, now there is a flow action called send to Data Cloud. So you can go into flow and send stuff over there. You can specify a bunch of settings in this action.
Send stuff like a record or send stuff like a table, like an option?
I believe you can send anything that you would have in flow. So it would be like a series of records or a single record, kind of whatever you want to do. And they added support for some new field data types. So I feel like I'm back in 2006. They're like, yay, Salesforce has a URL field. But it's now in Data Cloud.
You didn't do like a mail before?
You had to dump it all in text fields. Okay, so now we'll get into a little bit more code, and I've got a couple of demos for these. So who here is doing Lightning Web Component development? Okay, 3 or 4 or 5, maybe. So the first is the record picker component. If you've been doing development that involves lookups, you've probably been using Lightning input field, which works, but it's dependent on like having a field that you can reference that behaves the way you want it to on the object that you're working on. So the record picker field is kind of like a generic lookup field. And it works online or offline. It works on desktop or mobile. So if you're mobile offline, it still uses like the data that's downloaded on mobile to be able to do lookups. You don't have to have access, and that's all baked into it. I'll show you in the demo that where you can like customize it. You can add filters and which fields you want to search and things like that. The only downside I've seen so far is it doesn't use the advanced SOSL searching. So if you have a typo, it doesn't pick it up. It does more like a standard SOQL query. I do kind of get the feeling from the release notes that they're going to change that in the future. So if you take their Lightning Web Component examples and install it in one of your dev orgs, you will get something similar to this. It's only slightly customized. But this record picker is the component in the middle. It's the select a record and the search box. And so if I go in here and search for some contacts that are in my org and click on that, it is actually returning the data that is then used to render the component below it, which is just a little contact input. Very simple demo, but let's see actually what it took to put this together. So this is basically all that's in the record picker component. Let's see if we can make that a little easier to read. So this is basically all you need to add a record picker inside of your page. So you just specify what object you want, the placeholder, what label, on change, and then in the JavaScript file, you specify how you want it to behave. So in here, I've got that it's using contact. It's using a custom component to show an error message if we have it in there. So that's why we've got the wire error in there. I'll add the filter in a second. But you can see it's got the ability to set certain variables, what it does on when it's changed. So this is what's causing it to update the page and show the record component. And it supports GraphQL for the results. So you can query anything that's in the UI API and get the details back. So this is actually what's querying the name, the phone, the title, and the picture of the contact that I selected.
Is it, you have equal there, could it be why you're not getting the, oh no, it's just record, never mind.
Yeah, so it's just saying, give me that one that I selected. So you saw at the top, I've got this filter. This is one of the things you can't do with the Lightning input. But if you go here, and you just add to the component filter. Good, successful. It's always good when things work. Now it is now filtering for just Salesforce ones. So if I search for, who's in here? Cody, it shows up. But if I search for, let's see, we've got Sam Altman in here. I search for Sam, it doesn't show up because he's not at Salesforce. So you can add filters like that to make it really unique. And you can also specify which fields on the target object you want it to search. So you can really customize this for your component.
That's nice. And you can do it for custom objects. It supports custom objects and.
Yep.
Interesting.
The second one, if you only have a few people doing Lightning Web Components, how many people are doing anything with console apps? How many people know what a console app is? Okay.
Like
well,
Service Console?
Yeah. So you can build, in case you haven't played around with this, you can build any app into a console app. And so a console app is designed for people that are processing a lot of records quickly. The two out-of-the-box ones are the Service Console and the Sales Console. And it changes how things are managed. So like when I click on this Salesforce record, it opens up as a tab. If I click on OpenAI, it opens up as another tab. So basically it gives me one browser tab, but a bunch of record tabs. And you can even customize like what happens when you open up a sub-record. So now I've got the SAM contact up and under the OpenAI account, but I can still go back to the OpenAI account. So it really helps if you're doing like support for hundreds of people a day to be able to like leave things open and switch around a little bit more easily without having to have a bunch of little tiny browser tabs where you can't read the title. So a simple example of this whole new API has a bunch of options in terms of opening tabs, focusing different tabs, things like that. But once it's implemented, you can do things like have a button that just closes whichever tab you are on. You could have it navigate to a certain record or switch which record is focused. So there's a lot of options in this new API. And where did I put the... Oh, that is large. Don't know where I put that Lightning component, so I will open it here. So that is a list of the methods that are available in this new class. So lots of options for really controlling the navigation of your users if you're going to build a console app.
These are LWC.
LWC. Yep. They're all part of this platform workspace API.
So if you have a LWC in the console app, it has access to all the tabs in the console app?
As far as I know, yes. I haven't done too much console development. If you upgrade your Lightning Web Components to version 60 of the API, there are a couple of performance improvements. I won't go into too much of technical details, especially since we've still got plenty to show. But keep in mind in the metadata file for your Lightning Web Components and all your Apex classes and Visualforce pages and whatever else you're developing, you can specify the API version. So if you've got a bunch of older Lightning Web Components, you might want to look at the release notes and see what kind of performance benefits you get. And lastly, they're working on better support for the Shadow DOM. So this is also, if you don't understand all the technical stuff, just a performance improvement. So something to check out if you're doing Lightning Web Component development, but they are supporting the native browser Shadow DOM instead of creating their own like sandboxed Shadow DOM. ISVs got really not much this release. But this is what I do full time, so I always look at what ISV's got. Permission sets are the way to go from almost all apps, but you can now control which profile settings are packaged. You can now remove custom metadata type records from 2GP for those people that aren't doing package development. 2GP was the second generation of package, and it's all source based, which is a nice improvement because we can build things directly from like our Git repos. We don't have to deploy stuff to an org and then go create a package to put on the App Exchange to give somebody. But it's not quite at feature parity yet, so every little improvement like this is nice. Einstein Copilot is coming out, and for ISVs, we get the Studio Skills Builder, so that allows us to like build prompts and do some other things that help train how our apps interact with Einstein Copilot. And next month, just before the salary survey meeting, we will be at the Salesforce offices on Friday, February 23rd. And Grace Donnelly, one of their technical architects, will be presenting on Einstein Copilot and a couple other things. So definitely check out that meeting. And lastly, this actually affects everybody, but Omnichannel is now available to all users in all orgs. And if you don't know Omnichannel, don't confuse it with Omni Studio, which came with Salesforce Verticals. But Omnichannel is for routing objects. So for example, if you want to do lead assignments or case assignments or things like that and have it be based on like who's available and what skills they have and things like that, Omnichannel is what you would use if you're not using one of the older features like lead assignments or case assignments. And that is helpful for app developers because now, even if we build a custom app with a custom object, people can use Omnichannel to route that. So if you're doing some kind of like financial service request, you can have your customers use Omnichannel to route. Lastly, we get into some advanced admins. Hopefully this is more applicable to everybody, but who here is using flows? Okay, good. So we've got two kind of cool features. One is the transform, and second is the repeaters. And I may have put beta on the wrong one. The transform is definitely in beta.
Repeaters is definitely two items.
Okay, so they're both in beta, which is Salesforce's way of saying don't blame us if it doesn't work. But it is an open beta, so as far as I can tell, you can use it anywhere. So let's check out some flows. So the first one I created is using the repeater component. And this allows someone to bulk create leads. So say you come back from Mile High Dreamin' and you've met a bunch of people and you want to put them into Salesforce and follow up with them. Of course, there's a bunch of tools to like scan business cards and import them if you have the money or the ability to have that tool. But if not, you can create a simple flow. So I'll show you what this looks like first. So here we have bulk create leads. It has one little lead form. If I've got multiple leads, I just hit add. I can do this as many times as I want and add as many leads as I want. And then if you wanted to sit here for another 5 minutes, I could fill out all of these and then hit next, and it would create all of these leads. Of course, if you mess up one and you don't want it, you just hit the remove. And there you go. We're now back to one lead. So this is really pretty easy to set up. It's all done in this create leads screen. So all I did was went and found this repeater, parentheses beta component, drag this onto the screen, and it gives you a little box where you can drag in anything except for record fields, as far as I know. So it requires that you use these input fields and not this fields tab. At least I'm pretty sure. Oh, maybe we should try this. No, it didn't go in. Yeah. It just fools you. You go above or below the repeater component. So yeah, I think that's accurate. You can drag these different fields into the repeater component. See how now that sender one lit up. And you can add whatever fields you want. And then the repeater does the rest for you. Now the repeater creates a list. So what you typically want to do after this is actually loop through those and set it to whatever you want to do with it. So in this case, I added it to leads, added the leads to a list. So here I just go through lead form all items. That's the variable that they give you since I named that. And then in each of these, I created a new lead variable, set the 3 different fields that we have in there, and then added a new leads, plural list, and added the new lead to it. And then finally at the end, I just insert those leads. So pretty straightforward. The second one, is for the transform component. So this one gets a little bit more tricky, but I think it's really powerful because it helps you avoid loops. Ironically, I couldn't get it to work with the input from the repeater component. So maybe that's something they're going to add in the future, but it wouldn't let me use this in the other demo like I wanted. But this is a record triggered flow. That's just an example. I'm sure we're all aware if you're using Sales Cloud, a lot of times you'll get a lead, but that lead may already have an account and contacts that are somewhat related to it in the system, coworkers or something like that. So the goal of this example trigger is it searches for related contacts based on email domain, and then it creates a junction object that links the lead to those contacts. So the first thing is just a simple query. I'm searching for all contacts where the email ends with the email domain. And the email domain is just a relatively simple formula that says, if the email contains an @ symbol, give me the right end of it after the @ symbol. Once you get that back, you can go into the new transform element and map it to our custom object. So nice. You just click the plus button here, you search for whatever you want to add. So it does have to be something that you've already done in the flow. So here we have like the record available that comes with the flow, and then the contacts from get related contacts. And those are the 2 that I've added down here. Once you've added those, each field has this little dot. And once you click on it, let's see if I can grab something that's relevant. You can then click there and then click on the other one, and it will map it back and forth. So these are already mapped, and it's, to me, like every time I've done this so far, I've had to like click like 3 times to get it to like map correctly. I was trying to do this the other day, and I was like, I don't even know how to get rid of this line. But the first time you're in there, it works pretty well. So if we go in here and click, we've got the ID from the related contacts, click it over, it does the simple drag and connects those 2. And then go down here to the ID for the lead that came in with the flow and map it to the lead ID. And so now we've created that junction object to link the contacts to the leads. And then the last step in the flow is just to insert that array of related contacts. It does also support some functions, but I have not been able to get this to work consistently. I don't know. I think I might need to have a non-ID field, but there is a way when you map this in, a little F with an X below it will pop up, and then you can go into a formula editor. So you can do some kind of transformation on the values that you're copying over.
Are the functions Salesforce functions, or are they like MuleSoft functions? Because this looks a lot like MuleSoft.
Let's do.
Like I know they have a data transform language.
Let's do city to department. See, nope, can't do that.
And the last release did add a lot of, I think it added like a class for MuleSoft methods or something. Like they're starting to like kind of overlap the 2.
Those are new guys.
In Apex, right, there's a class that has like methods.
Yeah,
So
it was data transformation too.
I mean,
This is-
that's pretty much
this is what you get, which to me looks like the standard flow formula over
Yeah,
there.
that's cool.
So, and you do have to do it like a bulk formula, which I haven't played around with too much. So if you do, post it in Slack, let us know what you come up with.
That's cool.
So this is a list of objects or a list of objects?
Yes, does a list to a list.
The other ones don't get created, you have to have vote.
What do you mean? So this one I had like the related contacts that I queried, and then the record from the trigger, and I mapped it to, well, I'm deleted it now, but the junction object. And then the junction object then gets inserted with another like standard create records statement, which fails now because I don't have the right record mapped in the transform.
So you can do this instead of creating the junction object in the object builder?
So you still create in Object Manager the junction object itself.
Right.
But what this saves you from is having to do a loop, because before you would have to loop through each of these contacts that you got back from the get records query and do what I did in the other flow, which is for each one, create a temporary contact variable and then add it to a list and then do that over and over. So this basically replaced these three.
Loop through, because I've done that when you get an incoming lead. What's the related account, which is just one record, what are the related contacts, which is a list.
Yep.
All right, so instead of looping through, you just do that transform and boom. It's in that junction, or in that master detail relationship or junction object.
Exactly.
Huh.
So the next one is reports and dashboards, which now have summary filters. So has anybody ever been asked for a report that's like, show me our top 10 accounts based on like total revenue or something like that? And the solution before was you create a report, but then you can't filter it down to just top 10 in the report. So then you have to add it to a dashboard so that you can limit the table or whatever and get that. So now with summary filters, you can do that directly in the report. So you don't have to add it to a dashboard to filter it out. It does have to be enabled. It's in the report and dashboard settings and setup. I couldn't find it in the few orgs I test. So hopefully they didn't lie about this and it's actually coming out. And lastly, user access policies.
So really quickly for the summary filter, so like in that example, I give you my biggest accounts. Can you literally say, give me the top 10 accounts? Or do you have to say, give me accounts greater than $100,000 or something like that?
No, I believe anything in there, like the summary data is sortable, and the limit was one of the examples I have. But again, I couldn't play around with it, so I don't know exactly the limits yet.
Okay, thanks.
Lastly, if you work in an org with a lot of users and you're tired of having to like add a bunch of permission sets and change profiles and stuff every time you create a new user who's just another sales user, then you can set up user access policies. This is a open beta, and it allows you to basically set up like what permission sets and other things that you want to apply to a given user based on fields on their user record. So you can say like for a given role, you apply a certain permission sets or things like that.
Was that different than like a permission set group or something, or just a trigger?
I don't do enough with permission set groups to answer that question. Has anybody looked at this?
The
Okay.
other question is, does it auto assign based on the role? Or else
Yes. And I think that's the main difference, because they made a big deal about you being able to use criteria that's based on the user record. So I think permission set groups are still a manual assignment. It just allows you to put multiple permission sets together, right?
Trigger flow.
So now you don't have to write a trigger or a flow to do it. You just use user access policies.
Question from the chat, are user access policies limited to just 20 per org?
I don't know the limit.
Looks like they at least used to be.
Okay. Is anybody in here on Unlimited Edition? Got one? Does anybody have signature support? Wow, fancy.
We spend a lot of money with Salesforce, right?
I didn't even know there was a signature support. I
is
thought
it?
it was just Premier.
Maybe I should double check. Maybe I should double check.
Yeah, it's like the Amex
I don't
Black
know.
of Salesforce
I
support.
don't. Maybe I didn't realize there was a difference between Premier and Signature. But
So Signature, you get like a dedicated support person to help you with your org
Oh.
and stuff like that.
not sure.
If you don't have Signature Unlimited Edition, enjoy the nice comic on the right. For everybody that is interested in Ultimate or Unlimited Edition or Scale Center, you do have a couple new benefits this year. So you can actually get a graph of real-time org performance in production. You can run performance tests in the full copy sandbox. And Scale Center previously was only for Unlimited Edition. Now it's also available for people with Signature support. So if you're on Enterprise and feel like you're growing too fast for Salesforce and need Scale Center, you can consider Unlimited or Signature support. And with that, we'll hand it over to Jeff.
Can I use one of your computers? Is that-
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine's currently presenting. You're welcome to switch
No,
chairs.
Can I ask a real quick question?
Yeah.
You mentioned Slack.
Yep.
And I think I've seen another previous thing about Slack before, but how do you get on the Slack group?
For us,
Yeah.
we will get with me after this, and I'll give you the link to join.
Or you can, give us your email and we'll do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about Service Cloud changes. I've been doing a lot with Service Cloud lately, and then some admin and platform stuff. And I grouped it by what we need to know and what I'm actually excited about. So on the need to know side, so setup is moving to a new domain, salesforce-setup.com. So you got to update your allow lists, make sure you can get to that. MFA, I don't know, Paul, you know this better. MFA is turned on in the Spring 24 release, but they're not enforcing it, but they're defaulting it. So, I mean, I don't know, use it in production. Major releases with no downtime, like they used to do these around midnight on a Friday, like who cares that it happens in a minute? Maybe it was like 8 a.m. someplace for somebody, but no downtime for the releases now, but you still need to log out and log back in. In Service Cloud, you can keep agent names private in web messages. So there's an ability to create an agent alias, so you can just hard code it like support agent, or you can use a field off their user record, like nickname or some name that you make up. And set that on a presence config, and then it's available to all the users in that. More exciting stuff. So platform events now, errors and triggers will actually go to the event logs. So if something fails, you can see that it failed. Lightning App Builder, more support for mobile. Has anybody got users in their org who are actually using mobile? It's like 1.5. Yeah. Set field visibility by device. I think that's kind of cool. Mobile actions, now you can actually preview them. Lightning App Builder dynamic forms can add fields from related objects. So this, I think, is really cool. So to do this before, you would either have to have a formula field on your object that pulled in a related field, or you could use a related record component. And especially, I work with telephony. This exposes phone number fields, because it's been kind of a gap in Salesforce. You can't have a phone type in a formula field. So if you wanted a formula field on another object, you basically had to create the field and have a record triggered flow, and that would update the field all the time. And so now in Lightning App Builder, and this doesn't have actually a phone field as an example, but basically you can drill in to, if you've got your object like account or an object like opportunity, well, then you can go to the account and then drill into the account phone field and expose it, or drill into anything. You can keep going. In this case, I went from the case to the account to the operating hours, and you can just drop that field. It requires dynamic forms. Run omnichannel in a standard app. So now you can get omnichannel for all your users. Used to only run in console mode, and now it runs for everybody. They've got this new thing called omnichannel sidebar. So if you want it, it replaces the omnichannel widget Just like the omnichannel widget would pop up from the utility bar, this will come over from the side. You need to turn on enhanced omnichannel. In Service Cloud, you can customize pages for supervisors. So basically, in Lightning App Builder, there's a new kind of page you can build called an Omni Supervisor page. And just like you would build any page in Lightning App Builder, although there's no activation, it just is. And then in a supervisor configuration in Omnichannel, you can set it. And then in Omnichannel, it shows up as another tab. So, I just kind of hacked together a little example here, but I think the big reason you would want to do it is if you want to do Lightning Web Components and drop them into Omni Supervisor, that might be really useful. And you actually see the Omni sidebar on the side here, which I thought was really strange because it covers up some of the screen. And if you've got it, I couldn't find any way to get rid of it. So, this Omni sidebar, this is a checkbox on the page. So in the Lightning App Builder and the app options. Automated call summaries. I think this is going to be really neat. Unfortunately, it's only on unlimited if you add the Einstein GPT for service. So if you spend the maximum amount of money possible with Salesforce, you get this, but both for a voice call or for a messaging session. So what used to be called chat now is web messaging. GPT will look at it and give you 3 fields. It'll give you the summary, the summary, the issue, and the solution. And then really quickly, what I missed in winter 24, Einstein Activity Capture emails can be reported in standard reports. So anybody using Einstein Activity Capture? Yeah, it's a really cool feature. It basically connects Salesforce to your email server. And then when anybody's working and includes a contact or an account in an email, you get it in your org. It used to be visible on a lead or contact, but you couldn't actually report on it, and now you can. All customers get free maps. Haven't really played around with this yet, but it used to be a paid product, and now there's like a basic version that everybody can get.
Is that for characters?
What's that?
Is that for characters? Or just for like your contact?
I don't believe Maps Lite is for territories, but it's like for putting any kind of address object on a map,
Yeah.
or showing an address component, like a little map on a record.
Yeah. And then you could choose who can access the sandbox. So you can create a public group and limit people's access to a sandbox. That's what I had. We talked a lot about the Spring 24 releases. Anybody have any features that they're really looking forward to?
The one that I was really looking forward to was the flows. Now you can save flows even if you have an error on it or if it's incomplete. Previously it wouldn't let you. Now even if you have like that error saying that you can still, and I was pretty pumped about that. Now I don't have to have full versions of flow.
Yeah, that's a great feature.
I actually ran into that preparing for this demo. And a lot less flow errors. I don't know how many people have been using flow since it first came out, but it used to like crash on me. Usually whenever I'd done like 20 or 30 changes without saving. I haven't had that happen lately, so.
We've hit the max, like 70, I think it's like 70, 75, it's the max versions.
Oh yeah.
Okay. 50.
It's fun when your auto deployment fails because it deployed a new version and you're out of version, so now the whole build stops.
So hard to do.
Another issue we ran into with flows is before our sandbox is our sandbox is meant to be 60, we had a refresh happen. So whatever we had saved was in version 59 and flow went to version 60, so we weren't able to promote it all because we didn't refresh our board, just the sandbox refreshed. So that was it.
Yep.
But you can set the version back, right? And then deploy it.
And that's what we ended up doing.
As long as you're not using a feature that's in the new version.
Right.
Do we have any in chat, Lauren? Okay. For all the virtual attendees, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for joining. We will share the slides and eventually the video in Slack. For everybody that's here in person, you're welcome to hang out a little bit. We're going to do giveaways. We have questions?
You decide.
Yeah. No? Chat amongst yourselves for a minute, and we will be right back.